Imagine a historical mystery so deep it weaves together ancient folklore, massive human migrations, and a legendary connection to the ancient Israelites. For centuries, the true origins of the Pashtun people have been debated, completely captivating anthropologists, historians, and theologians alike. It's like a giant puzzle, with pieces scattered across thousands of years. And it all boils down to this one massive question we're exploring today. Are the Pashtuns actually descendants of the lost tribes of Israel? We're going to put our historical detective hats on and take a deep dive into ancient texts and modern science to see what the evidence really tells us and figure out why this fascinating theory has stuck around for hundreds of years. Here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by meeting the Pashtuns. Then we'll unravel the lost tribe's legend itself. Next, we're going to look at some seriously striking cultural clues, weigh those against the hard science of language and DNA, and finally look at why this remains such a heavily debated, unresolved mystery. All right, Section 1, Meet the Pashtun people. Before we try tracking down ancient origins, we definitely need to understand exactly who the Pashtuns are and where they live today. We aren't talking about a small, isolated group here. The Pashtuns are a vast, incredibly diverse ethnic population. To put it in perspective, they form the largest ethnic group in Afghanistan, making up roughly 42 to 47% of the whole country. They're also the second largest group in Pakistan at about 15.4%. Plus, there's a significant historic diaspora over in India, stretching back generations. So we're dealing with millions of people. And tracing their exact roots? Well, it's complicated. The Asian studies expert Willem Vogelsong totally hit the nail on the head when he said that studying the origin of Afghans and Pashtuns is akin to exploring the source of the Amazon River. It's massive, it has countless tributaries, and pinpointing a single starting point is virtually impossible. That incredible complexity is exactly why this topic is so hotly debated. Which brings us right into Section 2, the Lost Tribes legend. How in the world did this huge population in South and Central Asia become linked to the ancient Israelites? Let's look at the timeline. The whole story starts way back in 721 BCE. According to historical and biblical accounts, the Assyrian Empire conquered the northern kingdom of Israel. They exiled thousands of Israelites, often called the 10 Lost Tribes, and those tribes basically vanished from the historical record. Fast forward 1,000 years to the 3rd century CE, and we finally see the very first historical mentions of the Afghan people in documents from the Sassanid Empire. Then, traditions point to the 8th century CE, saying immigrant Bani Israel, or children of Israel, settled in the Ghor region of Afghanistan. Now, here's the crucial bridge between those events: oral traditions. Widespread Pashtun lore traces a direct lineage back to a patriarch named Makhzan-i-Afghani. And who was he? According to these legendary genealogies, he was the grandson of King Saul from the tribe of Benjamin, literally one of the original tribes of Israel. This figure is said to be the namesake of the entire Afghan people. And this wasn't just a story told around campfires, it was formally written down. We see the Israelite theory persistently advocated in major Persian Afghan chronicles. The 13th century Tabaqat-i-Nasiri mentions the settlement of the Bani Israel. Later, in the 17th century, a scholar named Nima Allah al-Harawi compiled a comprehensive history known as the Makhzan-i-Afghani, which fully documented this Jewish origin story for the Mughal emperor. Okay, jumping into Section 3, cultural and historical clues. Texts and stories are one thing, but what really gets anthropologists excited are the striking, real-world behavioral overlaps. People have long noticed that certain practices in traditional Pashtun communities mirror Jewish traditions almost perfectly. We're talking about things like lighting candles on Friday nights, strictly separating meat and dairy in their meals, and covering graves with stones. When you compare that to Jewish Shabbat candles, the dietary laws of kashrut, and Jewish burial customs, it's virtually identical. It's a fascinating cultural mirror. And the connections go straight into their names, too. Hebrew names are incredibly common in Pashtun society. Take the massive Yusufzai tribe. Their name literally translates to son of Joseph in Pashto. You also see tons of people named Asif, Binyamin, Kenan, and Barak. The Barakzai tribe, for instance, shares the name of the ancient Israelite warrior Barak. But let's shift gears for Section 4, language and DNA. Folklore and shared names are super compelling, but what happens when we look at this through the lens of modern science?
First up is linguistics, and this is where the Semitic origin theory runs into some serious roadblocks. Linguists have proven that the Pashtun language doesn't have Semitic roots at all. It actually belongs squarely in the Aryan, or northeastern Iranian language family. It shares profound roots with ancient texts like the Avesta and the Rig Veda. For example, that distinct sh sound you hear in Pashto matches up perfectly with old Iranian compound sounds. So linguistically, the Pashtuns are deeply, deeply rooted in Central Asia.
Now, what about DNA? Modern scientists use genetic testing to map ancient migrations. Real quick, we need to define something. A Y chromosome haplogroup. Think of it as a genetic population group of people who share a common ancient ancestor purely on the father's side. By tracking these genetic markers, we can literally see where a population's ancestors came from. So, when researchers looked at the DNA of Afghan and Pakistani Pashtun men, the results were eye-opening. Over 50% carried a specific marker called the R1A1A-M198 haplogroup. Here is where it gets crazy. That marker is actually shared with Ashkenazi Jews. But wait, researchers say this link likely doesn't come from ancient Israelites, but rather from Central Asian Khazars who converted to Judaism around the 8th century. The DNA also showed no specific Greek markers, which challenges other myths about Greek ancestry. And finally, it revealed intense genetic isolation. Basically, the massive Hindu Kush mountain range acted like a giant wall, preserving these distinct lineages for thousands of years. This all brings us to our final section, an unresolved mystery. Let's weigh the myths, the historical texts, and the DNA, and try to make sense of it all. When we look at the counterarguments, the case against the lost tribes theory is pretty robust. Historians point out that the Assyrians usually deported people within their own empire. There is absolutely no hard archaeological evidence of a mass migration that far east into Afghanistan. Plus, the Silk Road's massive trade network easily explains the genetic and cultural mixing. And as for those shared customs, things like dietary restrictions and circumcision are also just incredibly common across the broader Islamic world. The 19th century historian Mount Stuart Elphinstone probably summed it up the best. He noted that it's totally normal for ancient societies to adopt these grand, epic origin stories. He wrote, "We must class the descents of the Afghans from the Jews with that of the Romans from the Trojans. Basically, it functions more as a powerful founding myth that unites a people, rather than a literal factual record." So, the DNA points to Central Asia. The language points to Iranian roots. Yet, the oral traditions and cultural echoes fiercely defend the Bani Israel legacy. History often leaves us with fascinating mysteries rather than simple answers. Whether this theory is true or not, the story of the Pashtuns continues to inspire historians and researchers around the world. Thanks for exploring this amazing piece of history with us today. Keep questioning the past, and we'll see you next time.